Hey y'all, thank you for tuning in to another video of Better Out Than In, Real Talk with Kai. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who watched my video last week. Also, thank you to everyone who subscribed to my video, everyone who viewed it. Thank you for the support, all of the positive feedback and comments. I really appreciate. It makes it really easy for me to feel more comfortable to share my story. So thank you so much to everybody who has supported me on my first intro video last week and who will continue to support me through my journey of sharing. So thank you. This week, I'm going to be talking about when I got diagnosed and then the first couple of days out of the hospital after I got diagnosed and got taught how to do everything with my diabetes. So yeah, so when I first got diagnosed, what I remember is I had like what felt like a stomach flu that I can describe now. I couldn't hold anything down. I just didn't feel good. And so my mom took me to the doctor and they were like, oh yeah, she just has a stomach flu. And they gave me like a shot in my ass with this long needle and sent me on my way. So we go home, cool. Go to sleep, and they say everything should, turn back to normal within 2 days. My mom was working like graveyard shifts at that time. So one of my brothers, Randy, he was watching me, and I was on the couch the next morning, and he had me eating, I believe I was eating some rice, and he was like, you need to eat, and I'm like, I can't, and I just kept like falling asleep, and I couldn't hold it down, and I remember my brother calling my mom after I had vomited, and it was like weird looking, like it looked like wet coffee grounds. Like, you brew coffee and the leftover coffee grounds that you throw away. That's kind of what it looked like. I'm sorry for that description, but that's kind of what it looked like. And I was like really thirsty though, like, but I couldn't keep anything down. And so he calls my mom and he's like, Mom, something's wrong with her. She doesn't look right. Like, she looks like she's dead. And so, like, my mom comes home. I remember her putting me in a bathtub and her being on the phone with that vice nurse. And, man, I mean, it felt like we waited for forever for them to even get on the phone. But by the time they got on the phone and she was, like, describing what the vomit looked like and just my overall state of kind of consciousness or how I looked and how I was behaving, they were like, you need to bring her to the hospital right now. So I remember like my mom putting clothes on me and like them taking me to the car. And once we got to the hospital, to the ER, I remember getting on the gurney and like I kind of was like going in and out. But I remember the nurse asked me, like, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm thirsty. And she's like, well, we can't give you anything to drink right now. You can have ice chips. And I'm like, okay, I'll take some ice chips. But then she opens a Coca-Cola and drinks it. And I'm like, really, lady? I just said I was thirsty, and you're going to drink a Coca-Cola. Nice. But anyhow, so then I remember like kind of going in and out of sleep. I remember them saying, we finally got a reading. It's 999. And at that time, I had no idea what they were talking about because I'm like still kind of going in and out. I don't feel good. It's just all these people around me coming in and out, touching me, talking to me, asking me questions. And so the next time that I remember anything, my mom was sitting on the side of the bed, and I was like, Mom, I have to pee. And she kind of looked surprised, like as if she hadn't seen me in some days or something. And she was like, well, sweetheart, go ahead and use the restroom. And I'm like, you want me to pee on myself? Like, no. And she's like, no, sweetie, you have a catheter. And I'm like, what is that? And she was like, it goes into the bag on the side of the bed. And I'm just like, no, I want to sit on the toilet and pee. And so that episode happened, but then that's when the doctor came in and basically explained to me what my condition was, that I had been in a diabetic coma for 3 days, that I had diabetes is what they diagnosed me with, and that I would be transferred to Children's Hospital in Oakland to the ICU unit, where they would then be able to better care for me. And so at that time, I remember Auntie Cheryl, Mabry, Ariana, Sherelle, and baby Jason came and saw me. At that time, the Coronado YMCA in Richmond, California were a really big part of my life. So, thank you to Auntie Lori Roberts and Hudson Moore, Shahad Wright, Vincent Ellis, may he rest in peace. They played a big part in the first few days out of the hospital for me, and just my overall dealings with diabetes after I was diagnosed. So, but once leaving from the original hospital I was at, which was in Richmond Kaiser, I got an ambulance ride to Children's Hospital, which I was awake for. And I remember them just trying to be really nice and ask me had I ever been in an ambulance before, and just kind of made the ride comfortable for me. Went to the ICU in Oakland Children's Hospital and stayed there, I think, for about a week. And that's where they kind of got everything under control as far as the blood sugars. Because, again, that 999 number that I had mentioned was like super high. On a meter, for a regular meter, for a testing reader at home for people to check their blood sugars, like anything over 600, it will not show on the meter. It just says like HI, which is like high. So at a doctor, their numbers is like 1,000. So for the first however long I was there before they got that reading of 999, they were unable to read my sugar, which means like it was higher than their meters can read. And by the grace of God that I'm still here, because with my sugars being that high, there's no way that I should be here. But he had other plans for me. And when I say he, I mean God. And so I made it through after those 3 days of being in that coma. And being at the ICU at Children's Hospital was so crazy. I seen so many other kids there that were going through so many other different challenges, and we were able to kind of get up and gather and hang out, and you got to kind of see or talk about why they were there. And again, me being a person that's not really open to sharing, I kind of was a little reserved. I still didn't understand why I was really there. And so, it was kind of hard to be away from home, and, your mom can't really stay there every night because she still had to kind of be at home and take care of my grandma. And it was just other things that had a part in play for our family. So it was difficult. And then after they kind of got a rein on my blood sugars and kind of got a regimen down and got my blood sugars down, I was transferred to Oakland Kaiser, and then that's where I got my training about my diabetes. So they basically trained me on how to do my insulin shots, how to test my blood sugar, what was a good blood sugar number, what was a low blood sugar number, how to correct a low blood sugar, how to correct a high blood sugar. But in the midst of getting this training, they noticed that something was still off with my testing. And so they found out that I had thyroid. And thyroid is basically your central of your whole system of your body. And so the thyroid, since it's the central part of like the body, basically it helps like develop the brain, it helps develop the digestive system. Um, it's a small gland here in the front of the neck, and it it's like a big part of just your overall health. And so because my thyroid was acting under and it was not producing enough, that went hand in hand with the diabetes. And so a lot of the things that a lot of the challenges that I had were also not just from my diabetes, but because the thyroid affected that as well. It made it a little more difficult. And so my challenges were then now overly hard for someone my age at that time, because not only did I have to control this disease of diabetes, but now I have this hormonal deficiency through the thyroid gland that I now have to take medication for to help overall control the diabetes. And so it was just a little overwhelming. Even though it was just about taking a pill for the thyroid, just knowing that it was something else wrong on top of the diabetes already had me in a like fuzzy or type of mental space where it's like, damn, like what the fuck else? Like what else is going to happen now? Like I was in such a negative mind space that it's like my life might as well be over. Like I have diabetes, I have thyroid problem. Like what else? Like the doctors have been lying to me all this time. They've been saying I'm so healthy and now I have all these issues, and really not understanding any of it. Just knowing that the doctors are like making it, oh now yeah, you have this, so you have to take this medication for this and you have to do this to take care of this, and you're just like, whoa. And so here we are rounding up to about the day or two before I go home. And they're kind of like testing me out, seeing if I can do it. And I recall the day before I go home, they were like, well, do you feel comfortable giving yourself the insulin shots? And I'm like, I'm not doing that shit. I straight up told them, I'm not doing this shit. And they're like, but if you want to go home and, you want to be able to be healthy and live a long life, you have to do this. And I'm like, I'm not doing that shit. I'm not sticking myself with no needles every day, every time I eat. I'm not doing that shit. And as sad as this might seem, my mom bribed me with McDonald's. And that shit worked. She was like, well, Kai, if you do this, before we go home, I'll get you a 6-piece chicken nuggets from McDonald's. That could be your lunch. And there goes that nutrition thing again, right? But her not knowing, the extent of what the cause of the food might have been a part of my diabetes, or just a play in overall my health, and her knowing that would get me to agree to do something, which is sad to think of now for both of us, but true. It worked. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'll get McDonald's. Okay, cool. I'll do it. And so I remember going home. We got McDonald's. I ate that shit, like scarfed it down, I remember. And that was my journey of being on my own, basically, from the doctors, and starting my journey with diabetes and giving myself insulin. And I remember the next day from being home, I went down to the YMCA, and everybody was just so concerned, and they were all like asking like what happened and am I okay? And they were really cool. They actually were getting ready to open up a reading room. And I got to cut the ribbon to opening it up, and they gave me or gifted me some tickets to go to the Warriors game. So that was really cool. But I did not look like myself. I had lost a lot of weight. I just looked at like not me. But it was kind of hard those first couple of days because those symptoms that I experienced outside of the vomiting, but like being very thirsty all the time. That's because the blood sugar was really high. So I was dehydrated. My breath kind of tasted and smelled like juicy fruit gum. That was a symptom that doctors said were pretty common for high blood sugar. What else? Urinating all the time. I always had to use the restroom. Like, even if I didn't drink anything, like, I always had to go to the restroom. And just being, like, kind of tired all the time. So those are, like, the main symptoms that I remember experiencing leading up to me feeling sick, but what we thought was a stomach flu. And those first couple of days, having to give myself the insulin and my mom trying to do it for me in my arm, and me just being such an independent like child, I wanted to do it, so I didn't want her to do it for me. I remember a couple of times, like I would sit there for like a good 5 minutes before I can even just poke myself. Like I had to like talk myself into it, like, okay, let's get ready. Okay, you can do it. Okay, you got to pinch it. Okay, you're going to count to 3 and then you got to do it. Like, I used to have to like talk myself into it before I can even stick myself. So, those were like probably the toughest time, was like right going home the first week. But the more I got home, I mean, the easier it kind of got, but I still never really understood why I had to do it. And so that, I think, played a big part in me, being a little rebellious against the disease or against taking care of myself and those type of things. So next week I'll be sharing, kind of where my mental state went after it's been a couple of weeks of being home and my mom starting to trust me on doing it on my own, and her going back to work full time, and me being a little more independent of taking care of my diabetes. So that's what I'll be touching on next week. So hopefully you guys got some good information about some of the symptoms that you may experience with high blood sugars or with someone who might have diabetes, or just understanding, like the process that a person can go through when they get diagnosed with anything. Like when they get diagnosed, sometimes people don't want to share, or they just don't understand fully themselves why they're going through it, so they don't know how to talk about it. But having support is like a big thing, and so that was a big thing for me, having that support from the Y and from family who came and saw me. So thank you again, you guys, for tuning in. I hope that you'll be tuning in next week. God bless everyone, and please like, share, subscribe, and follow. Thank you.